that button, click that button.
Boo, ba ba, ba ba ba, boo, ba ba. Who's the man who will speak the truth? Boo, ba ba, ba ba ba, boo, ba ba. Lone Candle's that man. Who's the man who will bring light into your life? Boo, ba ba, ba ba ba, boo. Ba-ba, Lone Candle's that man. Who's the man who digs through human excrement to present you the gems? Boo, ba-ba, ba-boo, ba-boo. Ba-ba, Lone Candle's that man. Who's the man who kinda sometimes knows what he's talking about? Boo, ba-ba, ba-ba-da-boo. Ba-ba, Lone Candle's that man. Who's the man who has a scatterbrained, low IQ, and weak memory recall? Boo, ba-ba, ba-ba-da-boo. Ba-ba, Lone Candle's that man.
Hello, and welcome to Lone Candle Live. Today, I have another beautiful episode of Reply Guyan with Lone Candle. Here I bring us to Twitter, also called X, which I downloaded my archive so that I can look at old stuff, but don't want to go too old. So, this is back during the election of Harris v. Trump. This guy, I don't know who he is, it doesn't matter, said, Today I voted my values. And he posted an image of him voting for Jill Stein, which is a left of liberal candidate, specifically for the Green Party. And so he's like, yes, I voted my values by voting for the person that's closest to what I believe, even though they have no chance of winning the election. Now, if he's not, I don't know where he lives, if he's not in a battleground state, a state where there's really a chance for either of the main candidates to win, then his vote doesn't matter anyways, so I guess this just doesn't matter. The idea behind it's still kind of wrong, but it just doesn't matter. Yeah, I guess just vote which one you like the best, because your vote doesn't matter. It's the election's not close enough to matter. But if you are in a battleground state, this is an incredibly stupid idea. Vote my values. Vote my values. So whether you like it or not, the U.S. has a two-party system. And in this election, there was only two candidates who had a serious chance of winning. One was named Kamala Harris, and the other was named Donald Trump. If you actually care about your values, and that is what you are voting, then you vote for one of the ones that actually has a chance to win that is closer to your values. So your vote, it's only one of many, and this only even matters if you're in a battleground state, but it is a part of the collective decision of who runs the country, or at the very least, who has the office of the presidency. And this, of course, doesn't just apply to president. This applies to any voting in the United States. Your vote is your contribution for deciding who holds that office, who has that power. And if you have a preference, if it's truly not, I hate them both equally, which is conceivably possible, but most of the time, if you really feel that way, you're just not thinking about it enough properly, because there's pretty major differences between the two. And so, if you have a preference, which you probably should, unless you literally are that down the middle, in your opinions, if you have a preference, you should choose the one that is your preference. That is how you vote your values. That, through your little vote, makes that person more likely to win. That is you contributing your vote to democracy, and one of the most important parts of democracy, not the only important part, but one of the most important parts is the citizens voting for who rules them, for who gets to hold power. Your contribution is saying which one of the people who can actually win, the people who really, honestly, the only ones really running, who you prefer. If you, quote, vote but then vote for someone who has no chance of winning? That's just throwing your vote away. That's equivalent to not voting. And because you have a preference, because you actually do prefer one of the two main ones over the other main one, that is actually helping the guy you like worse. So I don't know this guy, but Kamala Harris is certainly closer to Jill Stein on the issues than Donald Trump. Where's Trump on this? Than Donald Trump. And so, if he was truly, most likely, most people like him who voted for Jill Stein, if they truly were like, nah, two people have a chance of winning, I'm going to vote for the one that I like the best out of those two. Or you could phrase it like, hate the least. I don't like the word hate there, but, dislike the least. Well, he almost surely would have chosen Kamala Harris. But because he, quote, voted his values, he didn't choose Kamala Harris. He threw his vote away to a vote that doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. She has no chance of winning. This is like not voting. But that means Kamala has one less vote, making Trump more likely to win. So if your values is, when I really sit down and get over my hate, get over my irrationality, you know what? I prefer Harris over Trump. By voting for Stein, you are going against your values and making it more likely that someone you like even less than Harris will rule the country. So this isn't voting your values. It's throwing away your values. Because if you actually care about values, then when you take actions, you take the action that maximizes the chance that something closer to your values happened. You made it more likely, Mark. You made it more likely that someone who is further away from your values, you made it more likely that that person runs the country by voting for this person. So by voting for Joe Stein, you didn't vote your values, you voted against them. Again, I don't know where he was voting. If this isn't a battleground state, it doesn't matter, and it's not. So this isn't an argument against Mark. It's for anyone who does this exact same thing, and this goes on for the left and the right, by the way. For anyone who does the exact same thing in a battleground state, you're not voting your values. You're voting against them. You're making it more likely that the person you actually like less, that would do more damage to the country, becomes elected. And that makes no sense. It's not voting your values. Now, it clearly says Los Angeles here. California was not a battleground state, so his vote didn't matter in the first place. So he kind of gets a pass. Nevertheless, then it means it's not about Mark. It's about other people who feel the same way and do this in a battleground state. All right. Now, what did I say? I obviously didn't rant nearly as long here. I just said throwing your vote away and allowing the greater evil to have a better chance of winning is not voting your values. That's what I said. All right. This one. This guy, again, don't know who this is, said he's responding to this. Let's look at what he's responding to. So this is quoting J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance said, and this is again, I think, during the election. We got the date here. It's October 2024. J.D. Vance said, if you're discarding a lifelong friendship because somebody is voting for the other team, then you've made a terrible mistake and you should do something different. And this guy said, I'll be honest, I find this view very strange. It either divorces politics from morals or it divorces morality from friendship. And he continues, to be super clear, I disagree with lots of friends and loved ones about lots of things. Obviously, that's good and normal. And many of my friends have voted differently than I have in many elections. Okay, so it's not a black and white view. You can't be friends with someone just because at some point they vote differently than you. All right. 3. I wouldn't lose a friend over the optimal marginal tax rate or the best way to regulate banks or healthcare. But all politics implicates moral choices. And very clearly, at some point, someone's politics can cross the line into moral abhorrence. I essentially agree with all of that so far. If you're mistaken about who's better for the country and it's in ways that should be obvious or worse, but because of your bias or whatever reasons don't realize it, you've made a moral mistake by casting the wrong vote. So I agree so far. And I'd find it very hard to be friends with someone I found morally abhorrent. Okay, so this is referring to the action. And no, I cannot pronounce the word abhorrent, okay? So right here he's talking about an action. You're supporting a politician who does horrible things or says he's going to do horrible things or is really bad in some way. That's morally abhorrent. Without getting too focused on, well, what's the line for it to be abhorrent rather than just bad? I agree that that's morally bad. You're making a moral mistake when you vote for the wrong person most of the time. Okay, but now he's saying, and I find it very hard to be friends with someone I found morally abhorrent. So now he's actually changing it from a morally abhorrent act to a morally abhorrent person. And his assumption there is because you make a morally abhorrent act, you are a morally abhorrent person, which I'm not sure I'm willing to go there automatically. Let's say at some point in your life you just are having a bad day and someone said something that really wasn't even that dickish and you punched them in the face, and that was completely unjustified. You punched someone in the face, they didn't deserve it, that was immoral. Okay, but you also generally live a decent life and don't do that very often. Or even never did it again. Well, let's say you've done it 5 times in your life. It's a bit of a problem, but otherwise you do live a good moral life. Do those 5 actions make you a morally abhorrent person? If you live a good life, but are just confused about politics and vote for someone that really is the immoral choice, does that make you an immoral person or a morally abhorrent person? I would say no. I would say you're not suddenly morally abhorrent because you made a morally abhorrent vote. That doesn't make you a morally abhorrent person in total. And so it seems like he's going there, and I don't agree. Now, let's see what he says next. The idea that a prior personal relationship should take precedence over a abhorrent worldview, so now he's not talking about an act or person, but a worldview, seems obscene to me. The fact that we're buddies is nothing compared to you wanting to do something truly awful to the world. Now, again, the specifics we're talking about is someone wanting to do something awful to the world, and the method in which they do that is their vote, maybe, campaign contributions, maybe some political speech supporting someone, maybe even working for a campaign. It's so the way the person wants to do immoral things to the world is by legitimate democratic activities for the bad candidate. And right now I'm just kind of assuming, to make it less complicated, that no, he's right. There is a bad candidate. And I actually do agree, but we don't need to get into that. So I agree that it's a morally abhorrent act to vote for the bad candidate. And I agree that, that it's often based on a morally abhorrent worldview, often like a false worldview as well. Well, often it's not because you're some inherently immoral person, but you have a worldview that is false, and then leads you to do immoral actions like supporting an immoral candidate. Okay, the fact that we're buddies isn't compared to you wanting to do something awful to the world. So, yeah, I would want to be buddies with people who just really wants to kill people. Partly because, well, if he really wants to kill people, I don't want to be around him because he might try to kill me. But that obviously doesn't apply here because this isn't like, oh, you're hanging out playing basketball or watching a show together, playing a game together. They're not going to kill you because this is just how they politically support. So it doesn't have a direct effect. It's more just because he finds that person disgusting. That person is disgusting because of their worldview and who they support politically, so I can't be friends with them. Essentially is what he's saying. I find it disgusting because you do immoral acts with your legitimate democratic activity, and therefore I'm pulling my hand up, but you can't even see on the camera. I do not want to be your friend. No, because you're disgusting. It's obscene to me. What's obscene? Things that disgust you. And he said, of course, we could disagree where that line is. And as I said, I think there's a fair amount of room in my life for people with whom I disagree about important matters of public policy. But the idea that there is something pathological about losing personal relationships over politics is precisely backwards. Politics isn't a hobby. It's how we collectively govern ourselves. And someone with awful politics threatens to harm a lot of people. That's true. All that's true. It's very important. What we do politically it is about how we govern ourselves, and if you're mistaken in who you support, you might actually be doing harm to a lot of people. That's true. That's more, not less important than whether we were middle school buddies or play softball together on the weekends. So ultimately, I overall disagree with. I actually agree with a lot of what he's saying, but I overall disagree with it in total. And so, look, society is a tricky thing. It's complicated, and it's difficult to keep peaceful and productive. It seems easy just because we live in good times. It doesn't feel like it sometimes, but it's because we're comparing it to potentially better times or rosy history, or just forgetting a mass majority of the human race has much worse times. So we're pretty lucky to be alive in this time and place. But society's difficult to hold together, so you don't really want to do things that might break it down more. That is a huge threat. That is immoral. If you do things that help contribute to breaking down society, and we don't know when that could snowball into a much worse society, if you do things that help contribute to breaking down society, that's an immoral act, similar to how voting for the wrong person is. And by the way, polarization, lack of connection, lack of friendship based on politics further divides the country. And if things go bad enough, that could result in civil war. It could result in more difficult politics and finding common ground. It could result in dictatorship, as in, wow, they are so bad, I don't want to be friends with them, and they're so abhorrent that, yeah, we got to support, kind of ending democracy, because what they want is worse than democracy. So, I think there's a lot of good reason to believe, probably in the political science literature, which I've read in the past, but I didn't come here ready to cite live, that social connections for society, for democracy, are important. If society becomes more and more divided based on politics, that makes society worse. It makes economics worse, because you're probably less likely to do the economic choice that's best for what you want and what they can sell you. Instead, I can't do the best one because I don't like their politics. It makes your friendships worse, because, he said, because we play softball together. Well, now you're not playing softball. Or maybe you're going to play softball with people that aren't as fun to play softball with. Well, that makes your life worse. And it further deepens the polarization and divide, which can lead to really bad outcomes politically. And so, I think society remaining stable and limiting polarization requires going, this person has abhorrent views, but I'm willing to still be friends with them. No, don't be wrong. If they're bringing it up and talking about it all the time, and that's an unproductive conversation, and they literally can't stop bringing it up, well, then for practical reasons, you have to stop being friends with them, of course. But if it's like, you both are willing to just not talk about it and still maintain the friendship based on other things, well, that is ideal. Don't be wrong. Sometimes you gain resentment through conversations and arguments, and then it does kind of destroy friendships. But that's, if it happens, it happens. But he's like saying, no, it's okay. I should actually purposely unfriend people. When I say unfriend, I don't mean necessarily on Facebook. I mean, in reality, I should purposely not be friends with someone who I previously had a positive friendship with, just because I know their views are abhorrent. That's extremely bad for society. It makes the world worse and ultimately can harm people, and is similar to voting for the wrong person. And so I deeply disagree with him that we should base our friendships based on people's politics. Again, sometimes it just happens. You keep arguing with someone to the point where you don't really like them anymore. Well, if that happens, it happens. But you shouldn't purposely make that happen. Because it's ultimately worse it's not just worse for you, it's worse for society overall, and actually could end up harming a lot of people in a way that a bad vote does. All right, let's see what I said. I said society will be worse the more people break up friendships over politics. So obviously I didn't elaborate here, but I said society, partly because no one engaged with me. So anyways, society will be worse the more people break up friendships over politics. I simply made that point. It's a good point. I think it's a true point. Obviously, if some people break up friendships, it might not matter. But again, we don't know where the snowball will happen where polarization makes things worse. We don't know to what extent the level of polarization now that we have, the temptations for people to do undemocratic things that we have, the difficulty it is for people to work together, like congressmen to work together when they need to. Part of that difficulty could be because of people with this attitude breaking up friendships, and so society's more divided on political lines. That's really bad. We want cross-cutting connections in society that cuts across political opinion. That helps society become more united, helps things being less heated. The more and more society becomes, yes, we are the Democrat group of friends and they are the Republican groups of friends, the more they are the other. They are the other. And naturally, your brain naturally creates in-groups and out-groups. Or in-groups, oh yes, we must protect the in-group. We must like the in-group. We must defend the in-group and believe things about the in-group that are good, whether that's true or not. Well, the out-group must be suspected. They are a threat. They must be weakened to limit that threat. And frankly, if harm is done to them, they are the out-group. Fuck them. We need to limit that extent, and one way you do that is go, oh yeah, he's an out-group politically, but, well, we play together in softball, so I feel less of him as an out-group. We play video games together, we do other things, so we're friends. So this person's not really my out-group just because we disagree politically. So, again, we really should push to not end friendships over politics. His attitude is wrong, despite his argument having mostly true things in it. And, again, if it happens naturally, it happens. Obviously, if you argue too much about it and you can't really be friends with someone because of that, well, all right, you can't help that. But the goal should be to maintain the friendship despite disagreeing about politics. All right, especially for those who aren't thinking about politics all the time like I am and maybe this guy is. So it might be harder for us because it's the main thing we're interested in. But anyways, all right. I think that's all I have to say on that one. One more here, and then we'll call it a day for this reply guy. Ooh, this one's Elon Musk himself. This is again from October 2024. He said, don't just open the Overton window, knock the whole damn wall down. I assume he means knock it down. Oh, he does. Knock down the whole damn wall. And since it's already on the screen, I'll go ahead and say, so like, you want us to say hateful stuff? Isn't the Overton window a good thing, depending on what it makes shunned? And so Overton window, not everyone knows what that is, so I have its Wikipedia here, just for, bright, just so, I don't know why everything's not dark mode. Look, I have a lot of problems with Elon, but he's pro dark mode. And he's right, dark mode is clearly the mode. Okay, anyways. Yeah! Oh my god, it's so bright. Okay, anyways. I'm just going to read the first paragraph here. The Overton window is the range of subjects and arguments politically acceptable to the mainstream population at a given time. It is also known as the window of discourse. The key to the concept is that the window changes over time. It can shift, shrink, or expand. It exemplifies the slow evolution of societal values and norms. So one thing to make clear, the Overton window isn't which speech should be illegal. No, it has nothing to do with that. It's just which speech is considered basically acceptable in society. There was a time in society when white people, in a racist way, could say the N-word. They could say the N-word behind people's backs or to their faces, and it was okay. The Overton window was saying the N-word was okay. And I know this just means saying it, like if I said it now instead of saying the N-word, actually, I would argue maybe that should be okay because I'm just describing the word. I'm not using it in a hateful way. But I'm talking about using it in a hateful way. That was considered okay. To people's faces or not to people's faces because they're just a bunch of ends. I mean, that was the thought process at the time. That Overton window was closed where no, we don't accept that is a good thing. The Overton window includes a lot of things. I think it's good that we think that generally we think it's not okay just to insult people, just to blindly insult people. I know that over on the internet, maybe the Overton window's a little too open. But that's a good thing. We want when people say things that are either obviously wrong, obviously mean, or horrible in some way, that we kind of shun that because that's spreading false information, misleading information. It's being mean. It's being a jerk, being racist. It's good that we have an Overton window. And so he says he wants to knock down the wall, meaning that implies get rid of the Overton window. That's utter nonsense. We want an Overton window. Now, we should definitely discuss what should be in the Overton window and what should not be in it. That is a fair thing to say. But that's not what he said here. He said knock down the whole damn wall, meaning there is no window. And Elon's wrong about that. A lot of his Twitter comments and shares are honestly particularly nonsensical, which is a shame because he's obviously a smart guy. But politics biases us all, especially Elon, frankly. But and then you see when he gets in government with Doge, and Doge did a lot of bad things. Literally, a whole lot of people are dead in Africa because of Doge. A whole lot of less science is being funded, including good science. And instead of going in and figure out, okay, let's see what we should get rid of, how we could be more efficient. They just took a hammer to things, and a lot of bad things resulted. And it's because Elon doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to politics. But anyways, all right. So that was all I was going to do, but I feel like I'm pretty good on time. This didn't take that long. So I might see... I have 2 others up here. Oh, this is a section of 3. There's too many. What's this? Well, I guess if we're on Elon... Oh, this next one's not Elon. Actually, the original post was deleted. But that's probably okay. Well, we'll do these. These are kind of woke things. People put in the category of woke, where I don't consider myself woke, but I do get accused of it. All right, so this has been about Elon Musk. He said, and this is November 2024 here, the word cis is a propaganda slur. As those who are not familiar with cis, which some people might not be familiar, it's referring to cisgender, like, you know, down here it says cis male, cis female. So when someone says cis male or that you are cis, they mean you're straight and that you're... Actually, I don't know if it includes sex. It might include... I mean, I don't know if it includes sexual orientation, but it definitely includes, like, whether your gender and your sex match. So basically, if you're a straight non-trans person, you're cis. Cis just refers to a straight non-trans person. Again, I need to put an asterisk here because I don't know if it always includes sexuality, in which case it would just include a non-trans person. And I actually sort of agree with this James Esses here. He's saying that, you know, cis isn't required. It's the default, male or female. We don't need to say cis when we're talking about stuff. I agree. A prefix isn't required. Just say male or female, and then if you're trans, you want people to know you're trans, say trans male or trans female. You know, if you want people to know you're trans for some reason, or if, you know, that's part, if it's relevant to the conversation. But I don't think we need to feel obligated to add cis everywhere. That's obviously nonsense. But Elon goes further than that. He doesn't just say, yeah, it's not required, we don't need to see cis, because I would agree with that. But he says it's a propaganda slur. Now, all sorts of words can be used in propaganda, but that doesn't make them inherently propaganda. And I'm sure people can use as a slur. People can use all sorts of things as a slur, but that doesn't automatically turn it into a slur. At some point it could. But no, cis isn't a propaganda slur. It's a legitimate word, and it makes sense as a word. It makes sense that if there are people who are straight and not gay, and this might not actually refer to sexual orientation, so I'm going to put that aside for now. If there are people whose gender matches their sex, which of course there are, that's the norm, it makes sense that they have a word that refers to that, cisgender. And if you're talking about a male or female, you say cis male or cis female. It's perfectly sensible to have a word for that. It's not inherently propagandistic or a slur just to have a word that refers to someone whose gender matches their sex. So the idea that he's just a propaganda slur, that's nonsense. That's ridiculous, Elon. And I'm saying that even though I agree with the comment he's commenting on, which, yeah, I agree that, well, not that part. We are a cis male or cis female, but we don't need to say it. You know, I mean, you don't need to add cis. You know, you don't need to tell her, hey, just so you know, I'm a cis male. Yeah, that's obviously ridiculous. And if anyone expects you to say that, that's obviously nonsense. You don't need to point out that you're cis. That's the default. Almost everyone is cis. So why would you, even just waste extra word energy to say that? So I agree that there needs to be, there's no need to say. I agree with his last sentence. There's no prefix required. In fact, it's sort of silly to even say that when almost everyone is cis. But that doesn't make it propaganda or a slur. And technically, this is not true. You are cis male or cis female, but that doesn't mean you need to say it because that's the default. But it's a whole nother conversation to explain to people that yes, gender is a thing and it's different than sex. I've discussed that elsewhere. Let's see what I actually said. Nah, oh man, I'm so cool. Nah, I'm so cool. And 3 people saw it. Of course, probably all 3 of those people are me. Anywho, let's not talk about my epic failure at social media. Nah, just means someone whose gender matches their sex. Not being offended so easily includes this. Oh, so this was at the time. I don't know if Elon still talks about this all the time, but for a long time, Elon was one of those groups. It was in those groups of people who talked about people are offended too easily. Comedy's back. People are offended too easily. And so Elon really pushed that. And well, This is him being offended by something that's not offensive. So he's a hypocritical little baby. Oh, no, just saying a word that legitimately describes something that it makes sense to have a word of it's propaganda and it's a slur. No, it's not propaganda or a slur. You're being a little bitch, Elon. Stop. All right? So not being offended so easily includes not being offended by this. And yes, if you call something a propaganda slur, it just almost by definition is a word that is an offensive word. If you call something a propaganda slur that is not propaganda or slur, then that's you being offended too easily. Anyways, all right, let's do one more and let's call this one a day. Oh no, one of my most unpopular opinions. Okay, so obviously this post was deleted by the author, but it was obviously saying something bad about Latinx, and of course, I don't have a problem with Latinx. I mean, to me, it makes sense to be. Here, I'm talking about the English language here. To me, not just to me, I think inherently, if you call a group of men men and a group of women women and a group of men and women men, whoa, that's weird. That really implies that man is the default, that man is the true human, and woman is to some extent a subhuman. I think it does imply that. And so for me, I prefer in that scenario a gender neutral term so that I don't have to do that. I know in Spanish, it's a gendered language, so like all nouns have a gender to them, and of course male is the dominant, quote male, because male objects are also dominant there. But we're not talking about objects here. When you're talking about objects, who gives a crap? Whether it's male or female. When you're talking about human beings, that has a lot more meaning to it. It's not just, we happen to apply things, male or female, in our language. No. Now we're talking about humans, and so when you do that, you're actually talking about the male gender and sex and the female gender and sex. You're talking about a lot more than just the happens of how the language works. You're actually talking about a fundamental difference in human beings. And it does imply that male are the dominant. And it's not a coincidence. The history of most peoples is men being dominant. And that often includes women being inferior. Of course, women's places in the home. Of course, most jobs shouldn't be for women. Of course, women shouldn't get to vote. Women don't know what they're doing. And so that includes the Romance languages. These are male-dominated societies, so it's no coincidence that the male version is dominant. So to me, a group of women is women, a group of men is men. Oh, combine them, that's also men. That implies men are superior and the real humans and women are inferior. And so I think it makes sense to have a word other than that. A gender neutral word there. Now, does this mean I think you're just a horrible sexist because you're going to say Latinos when there's a group of men and women? No. I mean, I think it's, to some extent, I guess I agree. I think it's a mistake. It's slightly sexist, but it's pretty minor. I don't even know if it really matters, Like, it might not really have any effect on society. Maybe it does. Maybe by subtly implying that men is the dominant, it somehow affects society. Maybe not. This is not you better say Latinx. This is, say what you want. But this is why I'm going to say this. Anyway, so I said Latinx makes sense. But that doesn't mean people will like it just because it makes sense. And now someone offered I somewhat remember this. Let's see. He said, no, it doesn't, meaning Latinx doesn't make sense. Latin is a perfectly acceptable English word that is gender neutral. In Spanish, the option is to revive the neuter Latin, which is what you see in some South American countries. So I'm going to dodge the Spanish part because I'm not speaking Spanish here. I'm speaking English. So I'm talking about the English word Latinx, and of course Latino and Latina are also English words now. We use them in English all the time. And so he said no. So this is what's interesting is most of the time people just reject the idea that you might even want a gender. When I say most of the time, I mean most of my experience, which might not be the average person. But they just reject that you would even, you would want a gender neutral term. Oh, you woke piece of shit. That's essentially the response you get. No, he's actually almost saying, it's fine that you want a gender neutral term, but this is just not the right term. I want to use the word Latin is better. And so I'm actually completely open to this because Latinx, one thing, it's a hot term now. You just hear it and it makes people mad for different reasons. Some because they think you're a woke asshole, and others will be like, oh, you're trying to dominate my people with your whiteness by by using this word. It's like, no, I'm just trying to speak in a gender neutral way. What the hell? But anyways, he's saying, no, here's just a better alternative. So let's consider it. It doesn't sound as awkward as Latinx. I mean, we don't normally end words in English in the letter X, or at least if we do, not in this way. Z rocks, but not where you have an N and an X. That is a weird thing in English. So, okay, it is awkward to say. It's a hot word, so maybe there's a better alternative. And he's offering Latin, which I'm open to. And I think he might be right that it's better. Now, I do have at least 3 misgivings with this. And it's because it already has a lot of other meanings, which I think in context, we would always understand the meaning, probably, but it's still a little awkward. And so Latin is a language. And so now you want me to use the word for the language also for the race. That's a little awkward. Context should probably make it clear, but it's literally the exact same word. Latin for the people, but also Latin for the language. So that's awkward, could lead to confusions, or just even like pause, kind of interrupting the conversation some. Because, like, we don't say, oh, yes, you're French and you speak French. Oh, we actually do. So it wouldn't be that uncommon. You would say, oh, yeah, they're French and they speak French. They're English, and that actually would be really normal. So even though it does bother me, that actually sounds pretty standard. How common is that? Yeah, hi, I'm Vietnamese and I speak Vietnamese. I'm American, I speak English, so that doesn't work here. And I'm Colombian, I speak Spanish. It doesn't work there. But there's many countries where the name of the country or the name of the people is different. But there's others where the name of the people and the name of the language are the same. So it won't be uncommon. So I'd say that's a pretty minor objection on my part, then, since that is common. Because that would mean there's an equal problem with the English speaking English. Which, as you can see, it is a little awkward. The English speaking English. Well, I have to use that word twice, but to mean different things. A little awkward. Not that big of a deal, though. Okay, my second is, well, it also refers to, so one refers to a language, but it also refers to a different people. There already are a people called the Latins, or they were. They don't really exist anymore. Maybe their descendants might exist. And so early in Roman history, like the city of Rome, Rome was surrounded by other peoples who also, I think, spoke Latin, and they were called the Latins. And so Latin already has 2 other meanings. There's Latin, the language, but there's also the Latins, these people who lived around Rome and the Romans conquered. And so that's awkward. That word already has 2 other usages at least. And the problem is there's actually a third use too. And that's in the Crusades. I believe this is right. Someone should check me. But in the Crusades, often the Muslims would call the Crusaders just Latins. They just call them all Latins. So again, the word already has so many other usages. And now I got to add it one more. That could be confusing and awkward. But honestly, I think context clues probably makes it fine. So this is actually a really good suggestion on his part. Let's see what I said here. So I said, I suppose Latin makes sense. It makes me think of the language, or the French in the Crusades, who were called the Latins, or just a random really hot Latin guy dancing at the bar. Yeah, because sometimes you might just call a guy, oh, he's Latin. Sometimes, at least in the U.S., I don't know how often people say that, but you go, ooh, he's Latin. And almost always, it's like a hot guy dancing at the bar. Or, I don't know why. When I hear, ooh, he's Latin, I think a hot guy who's Latin. Anyways, but I suppose I can add a 4th meaning to the term, Latinx. Oh, that's period. I suppose I can add a 4th meaning to the term. Latinx stands more independent, but is a little more awkward saying X. It's also a stupid name for a social media application, which that's just, I think X is a dumb name. Okay, but that's aside the point. So I basically just said what I just said. And then I don't remember there being more replies to this. Oh, I said also the Latins, who were the people around the Romans. Okay, so I basically just said what I just said. So I like the suggestion. It's really good. Frankly, I usually just say Hispanic. People object to that for reasons too. But it's just interesting because normally what you get with, I don't even say Latinx because it's not a priority. It's too annoying. But I think a lot of the hate against Latinx actually doesn't make sense. It makes sense to have a gender neutral term. It's not about race really at all. It's about feminism. It's about not wanting to imply that men are the more important. They're the real human, which I think it does imply when you call a group of men and women men. And so Latinx makes sense to have a gender neutral term there. And he's not necessarily disputing that. He didn't clearly say he agrees with that, but he's not disputing it. He's just offering a different word. Why not just say Latin? And again, for me, the problem is when I hear the word Latin, I'm instantly thinking the language. And so that really is problematic because with French, It's already established. It is established. When I hear French, oh, I could be the language or the other depending on the context. But when I don't think it's just me because it's not used like this. When I hear Latin, we're instantly thinking the language. I think almost everyone's instantly thinking the language. And so that makes it a little confusing because unlike English, where it's already established that is a language and a people, here, well, it's much more common as a language. And so that is a little confusing. So that's a downside there. But there's downsides Latinx for sure. So, it being hot and just, Latinx being, then this is an unusual way to say things. Like, can we have a word that sounds better? So, anywho, yeah, I think this is a good suggestion. And so I just, want to showcase this as some internet conversations. I can be like, oh, interesting suggestion. I'm probably just going to keep saying Hispanic because I don't really say Latinx or Latin. I mostly just say Hispanic, but some people don't like that either. You can't win. You can't win. You can't win. But I normally just say Hispanic, but Latin is an interesting idea. All right. Anyways, that's beautiful. I hope this doesn't show anything. All right, so I'm Lone Candle. This was Reply Guyan with Lone Candle, where we touched on a handful of interesting topics, and I gave you the one true truth, which is what I think. That there's no difference between one true truth and whatever I think. Unless it's what I thought 2 years ago and I'm reading it again, then what I thought was wrong and what I think now is the one true truth. I don't know how exactly that works, but there's probably a way. Time is timey-wimey. Maybe that one didn't count for some reason. But yeah. I'm Lone Candle. Like me, comment me, love me, and stream.